You wake up in the dark, steel walls, a single bulb swinging overhead, they whisper your name in the cell block. A door slams, footsteps echo, there are names that make guards lock their doors, straps on boots tighten, and even hardened inmates fall silent. Names that echo like thunder, the ones who shattered rules, ruled from within, committed horrors so deep that their shadows live longer than their cells. El Chapo walks the yard, Luis Garavito in solitary, Charles Bronson pacing under flickering lights. These people aren't just criminals, they are monsters. Not born so easily, but made by choices, madness, and moments of betrayal. This isn't about serial offenders for headlines, it's about inmates who turned prisons into palaces of terror, who commanded loyalty or fear with violence, manipulation, or sheer insanity. Tonight, we go inside the cells of the most feared prison inmates in history, the ones who bent the system, broke the rules, and left prison guards praying the night watch never finds them alone. Fear inside prison is different. Out here, we fear headlines. Killers, mob bosses, terrorists. In there, fear is survival. Guards and inmates measure fear not by the crime that puts you in a cell, but by what you can do behind the walls. Some inmates are feared because of their reach. They control gangs, smuggle contraband, and order hits without ever leaving their cells. A guard can lock their door, but not their influence. Think about El Chapo. Locked in Mexico's most secure facility, he still managed to disappear through a mile-long tunnel.
Prison side of the tunnel, but no independent observer has yet to run the entire length of it.
Guards who walked past his cell every day suddenly realized his power wasn't confined to four walls. That's fear, the idea that no matter what you do, he can still touch the world outside. Others are feared because of their violence. Men who treat prison as just another hunting ground. Robert Maudsley in the UK killed not only before prison, but inside it too.
My speech has been affected. Mr. Hogan, a good friend of mine, finds it difficult.
Murdering fellow inmates one by one until he was locked away in a glass box. Guards didn't just watch him, they contained him like a specimen, afraid of what might happen if he ever breathed the same air as anyone else again. And then there are those feared because of their madness. Charles Bronson, unpredictable, volatile, capable of exploding at guards, hostages, even strangers. His reputation grew not from one horrific act, but from decades of chaos. A man who made violence routine until his name became shorthand for danger itself. Fear also comes from scale. Luis Garavito in Colombia, La Bestia, confessed to murdering over 190 children. His crimes were so horrific that other prisoners, men already serving time for murder and rape, were terrified of him. In a place where violence is normal, he stood apart the monster even monsters rejected. And sometimes fear comes from legacy. Al Capone wasn't the most violent man behind bars. By the time he landed in Alcatraz, syphilis had eaten away at his mind, but his name carried weight like no other. Guards knew he could bribe, manipulate, and bend systems. Inmates feared what it meant to cross him. His reputation alone was a weapon. Fear in prison isn't about fame. It isn't about Netflix documentaries or movies. It's about presence. The way a name echoes through the yard, the way guards check their keys twice before opening a cell, the way even hardened lifers shift uneasily when someone walks past. And that's what separates the inmates we're about to talk about. They weren't just notorious on the outside.
If I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
They turned prison itself into an extension of their power, their madness, or their cruelty. They made the walls shake, the guards hesitate, and the system itself adapt to contain them. This is what makes someone the most feared inmate in history. Joaquin Guzman Loera. To the world, he's El Chapo. To guards, he's a nightmare with a face. Born in the mountains of Sinaloa, Mexico, he grew up poor, selling oranges on the street. But he climbed into the drug trade step by step until he became the head of the Sinaloa cartel, the most powerful drug organization on earth. Billions of dollars, tons of cocaine, armies of hitmen. If Pablo Escobar was the old king, El Chapo was the new emperor. But what makes him feared inside prison isn't just his empire, it's his ability to bend the system. Twice, he was captured. Twice, he escaped. The first was in 2001, Puente Grande, one of Mexico's most secure prisons. Guzman wasn't supposed to stand a chance. But after years of bribing guards, buying loyalty, and playing the long game, he walked out hidden in a laundry cart. Imagine that. Mexico's most infamous drug lord rolled past guards like dirty laundry. By the time anyone noticed, he was gone. They caught him again in 2014. This time he was placed in Altiplano, another fortress prison. Guards swore he wouldn't escape again. But a year later, his men dug a mile-long tunnel straight into his cell, with lights, ventilation, even a motorcycle on rails to speed up the escape. El Chapo simply walked out of his shower, climbed down, and vanished. Guards who thought they were safe realized the truth. Their prison wasn't secure. Not from him, not from his reach. When he was captured for the third time in 2016, the US demanded he be extradited. Mexico agreed partly because they no longer trusted themselves to hold him. He landed in New York, tried, convicted, and sentenced to life plus 30 years. Today he sits in ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the most secure prison in America. 23 hours a day in a small cell, no contact with other inmates, no tunnel to dig, no laundry cart to roll out in. And yet, the fear remains. Guards at Florence know his history. They know that twice before people swore he couldn't escape, and twice before he proved them wrong. They know his cartel still exists, still rich, still loyal, still ruthless.
In written letter, he's not happy about the conditions of his daily life. The 3.5-page letter.
And they know his name carries weight far beyond those walls. For inmates, El Chapo is more than a prisoner. He's proof that power doesn't die when the door slams shut. He's a reminder that money, loyalty, and reputation can seep through concrete and steel. Even if he never escapes again, his legend did something worse. It made prisons look weak. It made the world question whether bars can ever contain a man like him. That's why El Chapo isn't just notorious. He's feared. Guards fear what he represents influence stronger than locks. Inmates fear what crossing him might cost, even from 1,000 miles away. And the world fears the possibility, however small, that somewhere, somehow, he could vanish again. Inside ADX Florence, Guzman is just another inmate. Same uniform, same cell, same meal tray. But his shadow stretches far beyond the Rockies. His presence alone rewrote the meaning of prison. Luis Alfredo Garavito is not a name most people recognize, but in Colombia, he is whispered like a curse. His nickname says it all: La Bestia, the Beast. Garavito was born in 1957, raised in violence and poverty. By the 1990s, he had become one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history. His victims were not mob bosses or rivals. They were children, street kids, runaways, the poor and forgotten. He lured them with gifts, candy, small jobs. Then came the horror. He raped, tortured, and murdered them in ways too brutal to describe fully. When authorities finally caught him, they linked him to at least 193 murders. Some estimates suggest the number was much higher, possibly over 300. No! No! That scale alone made him feared. But it wasn't just the numbers. It was the coldness. Garavito kept notebooks detailing his crimes, dates, places, names, like an accountant balancing books. He showed little remorse. Investigators who interviewed him described eyes that never softened, a voice that never cracked. He wasn't just a predator. He was systematic. When he was finally sentenced, Colombia's laws capped his punishment. Despite hundreds of murders, the maximum penalty was 40 years. With reductions for cooperation, Garavito's time in prison looked absurdly short compared to his crimes. For Colombians, it felt like justice itself had been mocked. For guards and inmates, it created something worse: fear that La Bestia would one day walk free.
Y si así como Rodolfo le llegó su ciclo a Chela, a mí también me puede llegar.
Inside prison, Garavito didn't need weapons to terrify. His very presence did. Inmates who had killed men in fights, robbed banks, shot rivals, men hardened by violence, wanted nothing to do with him. Because killing another grown man is one thing, torturing children is another. Even among criminals, there is a hierarchy of evil. And at the bottom, despised and feared, sat Luis Garavito. Guards feared him for another reason: notoriety. Holding the world's most prolific child killer wasn't just a job, it was a responsibility loaded with pressure. One slip, one act of negligence, and chaos could erupt. There were constant fears he'd be attacked by other prisoners. Some wanted revenge, others just wanted the notoriety of killing La Bestia. Guards had to protect a man they loathed, knowing every day that if he died, riots could follow. Garavito's health declined in later years, and in 2023, reports confirmed he died in prison from natural causes. But his legacy didn't die with him. Even in death, his name carries dread. For Colombians, it's a scar on their history. For the world, a case study in how far human cruelty can go. What made him feared wasn't only his brutality, it was the way he turned prison upside down. The system is supposed to contain violence, to isolate it, to strip away power, but Garavito's crimes were so extreme that his mere existence inside a cell
Here they get 3 meal times, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
destabilized everything. He forced guards to protect a man they hated. He forced inmates to reckon with a predator more monstrous than themselves. He forced a country to face the limits of its justice system. And even now, years after his death, his story remains one of the darkest examples of what it means to fear someone behind bars. Not because of what he might do inside, but because of what he had already done outside. Luis Alfredo Garavito wasn't feared for what he could become in prison. He was feared because his name alone proved what kind of evil already exists in the world. And for everyone who knew his story, guards, inmates, families, that fear never fully goes away. Michael Gordon Peterson. That was the name on the birth certificate. But the world knows him as Charles Bronson, Britain's most notorious and violent prisoner. He wasn't born into a cartel empire like El Chapo or into monstrous infamy like Luis Garavito. Bronson's reputation was built almost entirely inside prison walls. And that's what makes him terrifying. He turned prison itself into his stage. Bronson was first sent down in 1974 for armed robbery. He should have served a few years and walked free. Instead, he built a career of chaos behind bars. Over decades, he took more than a dozen people hostage. Guards, workers, even a prison librarian.
There's not enough space, so they can't all go out on the same day.
He fought riot squads, trashed cells, attacked fellow inmates, and battled staff so often that he was shuffled from one prison to another like a live grenade no one wanted to hold. His violence wasn't always calculated. It was unpredictable. One moment, calm, the next, explosive. Guards described him as an avalanche waiting to happen. He would fly into rages over the smallest slight. In 1999, he took a civilian art teacher hostage for over 2 days, tying him up with rope and demanding bizarre ransoms like an inflatable doll and a helicopter. The man survived, but the message was clear. Bronson could turn anything, even a classroom, into a battlefield. Prison tried to break him. Solitary confinement, transfers, psychiatric wards, nothing worked. In fact, it seemed to feed him. He became a legend, not because of what he did outside, but because of how unstoppable he seemed inside. For the prison system, Bronson wasn't an inmate. He was a permanent crisis. And yet, he's not a simple villain. Bronson is a strange contradiction. Over the years, he reinvented himself as an artist, filling sketch pads with surreal, violent imagery. He wrote books, gave interviews, became almost a cult figure in Britain. Tom Hardy even played him in a film. For some, he's entertainment. For guards and inmates, he's a ticking bomb. What makes Bronson feared is unpredictability. With El Chapo, you knew it was power. With Garavito, it was cruelty. With Bronson, it's the simple fact that no one, not guards, not psychologists, not even Bronson himself, could predict when the switch would flip.
We're constantly being observed. I think this is one of the hardest things.
Imagine being the officer assigned to open his cell. Keys in hand, heart pounding. Will he be calm today, cracking a joke about art? Or will he snap, grab you by the throat, and turn you into the next headline? That uncertainty is its own form of terror. Decades later, Bronson is still locked up. He's now in his 70s, still serving an indefinite sentence. He claims to have mellowed, even petitioned for release. But his legend is already sealed. To guards who lived through his outbursts, to inmates who witnessed his fury, Bronson remains a symbol of pure, uncontrollable violence. He's not feared for empire or numbers. He's feared because he proved that one man alone could turn prison life upside down again and again just by refusing to be broken. Most feared inmates earn their reputation outside prison. Their crimes echo into the walls. But Diego Kasanova built his terror inside them. Kasanova, an Argentine man born in 1982, wasn't just convicted of murder. He became infamous for continuing to kill while already incarcerated. By the time his name spread across South America, he had stacked up bodies on the inside, turning cells into coffins and corridors into hunting grounds. Kasanova was first jailed for robbery and attempted murder. That should have been enough to keep him locked down for years, but prison didn't tame him. It gave him a playground. He murdered 5 inmates while serving time. 5 men who were supposed to be just as locked down as he was. Guards would wake to the smell of blood, to the sound of chaos, and Kasanova standing calm amid the wreckage. His methods were brutal and direct. In 2004, in San Martin prison, he strangled a fellow inmate with a piece of wire. Later, he killed another man by stabbing him repeatedly with a sharpened object fashioned from prison scraps. It wasn't about gangs or money, it was about domination. Kasanova seemed to thrive on proving that not even prison could restrain him. Guards grew to fear him not because he threatened them directly, but because he exposed their weakness.
We are about to see the worst of the worst.
If prison couldn't protect inmates from him, then what was the point of the system at all? Kasanova was a living flaw in the machine. Every time he struck, the state looked powerless. Other inmates feared him even more. Violence in prison often has rules, codes of respect, boundaries not to be crossed. Kasanova didn't follow any. He killed without hesitation, without a clear motive, without mercy. You never knew if he'd decide to target you next. That unpredictability made him more terrifying than any gang leader. At least with gangs, you knew why you were in danger. With Kasanova, danger was the default. Eventually, he was sentenced to life in prison for the string of murders. But by then, his legend was already written. A man who used the prison itself as his hunting ground. A reminder that some predators don't need freedom to kill, they carry their violence with them, no matter how thick the bars or how high the walls. Kasanova wasn't feared for empire like El Chapo. He wasn't feared for monstrosity on an unthinkable scale like Garavito. He wasn't feared for uncontrollable chaos like Charles Bronson. He was feared because he showed that prison, the one place meant to contain violence, couldn't contain him. To guards, he was proof of failure. To inmates, he was the nightmare you couldn't escape. And to history, Diego Kasanova is remembered as the predator who never stopped hunting even when the world thought the hunt was over. Fear. It doesn't end when the cell door slams shut. In fact, for some men and women, prison becomes the place where their fear grows even larger. El Chapo proved that money and power don't stop at the walls, they seep through laundry carts and mile-long tunnels, bending even the toughest systems. Luis Garavito reminded the world that some crimes are so monstrous they stain everything around them, even the hardened killers who wanted nothing to do with him. Charles Bronson showed how one man, without an empire or an army, could turn prison into a circus of chaos, unpredictable and violent.
So excited. We're gonna be face to face with the most dangerous criminals in the world.
And Diego Kasanova made prison itself his hunting ground, killing 5 men in the very place that was supposed to contain him. These names, and others like them, Bundy, Maudsley, Capone, aren't feared only for what they did outside. They're feared because of what they became inside. Inmates who ruled with charisma, brutality, or sheer madness. Inmates who forced guards to check their keys twice, who forced other prisoners to look over their shoulders every second of the day. Inmates who made prison, already a world of fear, even darker. And maybe that's the unsettling truth. We like to believe prisons are where the story ends. You commit the crime, you pay the price, you disappear behind bars. But history proves otherwise. For some, prison isn't the end of their legend. It's the continuation. It's the place where their power, their violence, their madness grows until it terrifies everyone trapped inside with them.
Getting an eye contact with them, they're
What makes someone the most feared inmate in history? It isn't just the body count. It isn't just the crime. It's the shadow they cast. The way their name becomes currency in the yard. The way guards lower their voices when they talk about them. The way their presence lingers long after the door closes. Fear inside prison is different from fear outside. Outside, fear is headlines. Inside, fear is survival. And these inmates, they rewrote survival itself. If this deep dive pulled back the curtain for you, don't just let it fade away. Hit that like button so more people see the truth behind these walls. Share this with someone who still thinks prison means safety, who thinks fear stops at the gates. And if you want more stories like this, darker, stranger, and more human than anything Hollywood ever imagined, make sure you subscribe. Because the names you've just heard aren't just criminals, they're reminders. Reminders that behind the walls we build, behind the locks and bars, fear still lives. And sometimes it grows stronger,